This is Dan Shepard. Welcome to this lesson on the 4 decisions. This series of short webinars is about having intentional, participatory relationships with your donors. Each lesson introduces ideas and tools you can use in your work pursuing each of the 4 decisions your future donor needs to make. Why they care enough about your nonprofit to meet with you, a fundraiser. What you do they might care about enough to consider supporting with a significant gift. How they could afford to do that. And finally, reflecting on why they care, what they care especially about, and how they could make a gift, will they make a commitment? Throughout my work training and coaching frontline fundraisers, I talk about doing the right things in the right way with the right people for the right reasons. Doing the right things for the right reasons is very much about ethical decision making. I invite you to consider ethics from 2 perspectives. One's professional, the other's very personal. This lesson introduces tools to keep your organization out of trouble, to keep your donors out of trouble, and to keep you out of trouble. During the lesson, I'll provide you tools to help you work in an ethical and professional manner. I'll encourage you to become familiar with pertinent tax law and with your organization's gift acceptance policies. I'll offer you a tool to reinforce your conscience, the Mama Rule. I'll introduce you to one of the 3 potential sources of ethical problems, your donors. I want to introduce you to some examples of the ethical situations you're likely to encounter and to invite you now, before you face them, to give some thought to what choices you'll make. The new frontline fundraiser may not immediately recognize an ethical issue when first encountering it, or may inadvertently make a poor choice without knowing why. This lesson is intended to keep you on the safe side of a line you don't want to step over. I rely on 3 resources when I'm tempted to stick a toe over the slippery slope that leads me toward trouble. First is a basic understanding of tax law pertinent to charitable giving, reinforced by access to professionals with more detailed expertise to help me when I need them. Sometimes you'll want to stand on tax law in order to defend an ethical decision you've made. Sometimes you'll need to hide behind those laws to protect yourself from an unethical person. Second is a solid set of professional and organizational policies regarding acceptance of offered gifts. Gift acceptance policies that protect you from making poor choices and that protect you from others who want to do things you know aren't good ideas. Third is what I call the Mama Rule. If I would feel uncomfortable sharing my decision on any issue with my mama, I already know it's unethical. Life is in many regards a series of choices and consequences. That makes it wise to think about the consequences before making the choices. The great danger to fundraisers in ethical decision-making is giving in to the pressure to produce and please our managers, compromising our principles in the process. I want to offer several examples of ethical situations I and others have encountered and that you're likely to encounter with donors during your own career as a frontline fundraiser. I want to equip you to respond to them appropriately, knowing in advance what you're facing. Let's look at unethical and misguided donors. You will encounter donors who are poorly informed of pertinent laws and policies, and some who are just unscrupulous. Federal tax law and good gift acceptance policies will protect you from them. Exercising the Mama Rule will protect you from yourself. Here are some examples I hope will be useful to you. I received a generous check in the mail from a family foundation managed by a key volunteer with our nonprofit. The person who established the foundation chose our volunteer to administer his wishes after the donor's death. All was well until our volunteer asked why she hadn't been listed in our latest honor roll of donors. After all, she made the decision to direct the gift to our nonprofit. I stood on tax law when I explained that, in the eyes of the IRS, the foundation was the source of the gift and would be eligible for any favorable tax treatment. Our policy was to acknowledge only the legal donor of any contribution. Imagine the potential effect on your nonprofit and on your reputation if word got out that Party A could get credit for Party B's charitable gifts. A prospective donor phoned me to offer $50,000 for a scholarship designated to a female student from her hometown. It just so happened that such a prospective student was currently working for the prospect. Well, there was no doubt that the prospect wanted to financially support the student, an admirable thing, and that she also wanted an income tax charitable deduction for doing it. She wanted donor status for paying a student's tuition. Imagine if every parent sending a child to college was allowed to do this. She even pointed out that another school had recently accepted a similar gift offer from her. This told me she had already had this conversation and was anticipating my likely response to her offer. My primary responsibility was to the school for which I worked. If a tax audit uncovered such a transaction, the school would be exposed for misrepresenting tuition payment as a charitable gift. Not knowing how the prospect felt or cared about this, my reply to her instead was that our allowing her to do what she proposed would expose her to tax fraud if her income tax return was audited. I stood on federal tax law and I was safe. Yes, $50,000 would have looked good on my performance report, but at what cost? At what risk? I still wonder how things turned out for the other school that gave her gift credit. I was offered a gift of real estate by somebody excited about the income tax deduction he would enjoy. He mentioned this right up front, ahead of any benefit that might be enjoyed by our organization as a recipient of his gift. He'd never made a gift to our charity. This was an immediate red flag. He had done his homework and understood that an appraisal of the property would determine the value for his charitable deduction. He offered the name of an appraiser he knew and made it a point to tell me the person was reputable and qualified. This emphasis sounded funny, so I investigated the appraiser, who had the same last name as the donor. Yes, they were brothers, and yes, the appraiser had a history with the local board of realtors for providing inflated values. The pertinent tax law clearly states that an appraisal to value real estate for charitable gift purposes must be conducted by an impartial, qualified appraiser. The man suggested didn't qualify on either point. I was able to stand on the law as I politely and, yes, regrettably, declined the gift offer. Had the prospective donor agreed to allow an independent appraisal, I would have pursued the offer. The fact that he didn't told me all I needed to know. It turned out that the property was then offered to a friend at another local charity, who took a closer look before she turned the offer down, once she learned the property contained significant amounts of asbestos, which the donor-selected appraiser was likely to overlook. Bullet dodged. An alumnus insisted on gift acknowledgement for his payment to attend his 25th class reunion weekend. I had no trouble explaining to him the difference between a purchase and a deductible gift. Had I blinked and given him a gift receipt, it would not have mattered what happened between him and the IRS if his tax return was audited. But the effect on our school when others started demanding similar treatment would have been unacceptably bad. Thank you for playing this short lesson. I hope you picked up some ideas you can put to use and that you'll enjoy the other lessons in this series. You're welcome to contact me for a free 15-minute consultation on the subject matter. For a deeper dive into the structure and the language of the 4 decisions, I invite you to enroll in our e-learning course, The 4 Decisions Online, which you can find at the URL you see on this slide.